So today I want to paint some mixed florals in kind of a weathered bucket. And I don't really have a plan. I'm just going to kind of paint intuitively and see what happens. I'm painting kind of a darker strip on this side, kind of rounding the bottom, and then a quick rinse or just dip into my water to just mostly get water on my brush, and then quickly working my way over to the left side. And I kind of want to leave the top of this a little bit vague there, so that I have a little more freedom with my florals, so that I can kind of overlap the bucket. A little more water. And I want this very imperfect. I want it very weathered. And I think that dropping some water, some extra pigment, etc. will help that. I'm probably giving this edge a little more fussing than it needs, but had that one little portion that was kind of sticking out, and well, I knew that if I dealt with it now, it would be easier than being unhappy about it later. And just adding some little shadows up here because I know my florals are going to be there. And now this could be a colossal mistake, or this could be brilliant, but I'm going to drop in just a little bit of raw sienna, just here and there. These over here I'd hoped would spread a little more. It was already a little dry, so just adding a little water. And you know, who knows? Who knows what that will do? Maybe a little more Payne's Gray over on the left. Just and I said little, however, I had not really realized how much I had loaded on my brush. So I'm going to go back in just with some water and touch that and let it bleed. That's a lot of water, so we'll just see what happens. It's going to be fun. Okay, what do I want to paint in here? What about some geraniums? Let's go with my, let's go with garnet. This is just a nice red. Let's see. I don't really have any room on my palette. Okay, here's how I like to do my geraniums. Is I just like to make some dots I like to remember that geraniums want to be kind of messy and not very predictable. They sometimes have these little blossoms that kind of, you know, go unpredictably out to the side and whatnot. So I kind of like to remember that. I'm giving my brush a little swish and a drag off of the jar just to get rid of a good amount of that water. And then I'm going to touch around here, and I kind of started well outside of my pigment because I didn't just immediately want that pigment to flood out. And then I just touch and kind of make these little points, and I'm letting that pigment bleed into those areas. I'm going to do this one next just because I feel like I didn't get quite as much pigment on it, and it's not quite as wet. I feel like it's drying a little faster. So I'm just touching. I like to kind of try to turn my brush. You don't have to touch every spot that you painted with pigment. And they don't all need to connect. I don't have a set number of these little marks that I make, but if you can see, kind of imagine that those are those little, you know, petals. And then you get some pigment residue on your brush, and you can easily just touch somewhere else and make a little petal there. Okay, I'm gonna stun you when I say I love it, but I already love it. I do. How about one out here, just kind of doing its own thing out here. And again, just rinsing that brush and then dragging that excess water off. I like to make sure there's no water left on the ferrule. And then see if you touch around, that was still quite a bit of water in there. And so I actually just blotted my brush, but I'm going to go ahead and dab that with my cloth because I don't want that big mess. And so now I'm just dipping the tip of my brush in to the water and turning that brush sometimes. It does really help to keep it a bit more random and a bit loose. Okay, so far so great. You know how much I love my olive green, but I think I'm going to use tree green for this. At least start with that and possibly mix. I will be mixing some yellow into this, into these leaves anyway. Let's see. I have a nice spot for a leaf here. And I just kind of like to use the tip and the side of my brush so that I get just some random, randomness in there. These are kind of scalloped, I would say. Maybe something just peeking out back there. Okay, while these are still wet, I for sure want to go in with that yellow, and so I'm gonna just kind of drag this off a little so I don't get my water too muddy. Sometimes I use 2 jars. Kind of depends on where I'm painting and how much space I have, and I don't know, a lot of factors. But getting my yellow deep, have some on my palette I just want to kind of activate. Get some water in that. And then this is fun because if you get a good amount of water, when you put this yellow in, it often will kind of push at that green pigment. And I like that. It kind of adds a neat look there. And while that's wet, I'm just going to take a bit of olive and drop it in there too. Just kind of randomly. See, let's get some more of these leaves. These do not have quite as much pigment, so I took some pigment straight off my palette and am touching it in there. Okay, let's drag some of that off. And then let's go in with this yellow. Yellow deep. That is a lot of water. Those were very wet. Fun. It looks like a mess, but I think it's going to be fine. get some of this olive ready. Okay, just putting in some different leaves in here. And we want some stems. Let's see. I'm going to clean up this little part of the pot right there. Just because I had that stem that really needed to kind of be grounded there. And I thought about, you know, could I do a leaf? Maybe I could have, but this is what we have. And I want to put a little more yellow into this leaf up here. Okay, let's see. I'd like to do some of those kind of round multi-leaf stems. A lot of times I do these in kind of a pointed manner, and I want to do round ones. And I think I'll use my green over here that has some I think it has some raw sienna and maybe even a little burnt sienna and olive. So let's start here and just kind of trail some things, just you know, be random-ish. And then I just kind of pull my brush kind of different directions. And you know, I love to overlap. Want some kind of sticking out back here. And some just kind of peeking. Oh, I love those. Very cute. Excuse the clinking of my ring on my palette. It's a little crowded. How about we have some of those here? I'd like to have this. Let's see. Love these. And then I'm just going to kind of, using water, I'm going to just go up my stem here so that those leaves are kind of behind the stem, if that makes sense. I just kind of cleared the pigment. Well, I love it. I don't even know what else to say. This is making me very happy. Let's see, just kind of thinking about some more leaves, and you know, I have this weird one kind of coming out here, which I don't know if it makes sense, but that's okay. And I just put some green pigment into my planter there. I'm gonna leave that. You know, I could be real picky about it, but I think it'll be fine. How about another one of these? And then maybe some, oh, let's see. How about some coming out over here? I'm not sure how much I love that second one, just because I would have liked a better angle on it. So I'm just going to go in and wet that, and then I'm going to just zhoosh. Just kind of let it be some background stuff back there. Okay, and we'll drop some pigment in here. I like it. I want to do some more of these, maybe right down here. And see, they're kind of roundish, but they, you know, they can have some other little features and shape, and I don't mind that at all. It's quite quite fun, actually. Take a little bit of that and just run along my stems here, kind of up into the leaves. These kind of remind me of ginkgo, just a little, just slightly. And you know, they don't have to remind you of anything. They can, but nobody said your art has to be founded in reality. Well, and if they did say that, they might have been wrong. Okay. I may need a little more of this pigment. I feel that those at the top ended up a bit darker than what I have here, and so if I can kind of run some pigment into these while they're still at all wet, then maybe I'll get a little more of the same values, just a little more cohesiveness. Not sure what the word is that I'm trying to think of. I also think I made these a little bit bigger, but that's okay. And I should have left some a little lighter. So just dab that a little. I'm just making some little strokes in here, tiny little strokes to just fill some of that, some of the white. Then I want to go into my green, this tree green, and I just have a tiny bit on my brush, and I'm using the very tip of it to connect some of these petals, kind of fork them off, you know, little V's kind of, but just thinking of how these are kind of connecting to the stem and to each other. And kind of keeping an eye on my value. These I noticed were kind of getting a little bit lighter, and so I grabbed a little more pigment there. I really love this so much. It's really cute. I think I'll put a little water around here. And then I'll take a little of my olive and just drop it in, just to give some more of this kind of effect. Oh, had a drop of water that just kind of released there, which is okay, but I was going to push that over here, so no worries. I love that. How about a little more pigment here? This green, I am going to try to make another leaf, which I like that one better. And I just want some of that somewhere else as well. Yeah, that works. Yeah, I like it. And maybe even take this kind of out to the side just a little. Okay. Something else I think I'd like to do is just kind of go in, not everywhere, but around these geraniums and kind of in some of these leaves in here, and just I had the tiniest bit of residue on my brush, and really I could have rinsed this and done this with cleaner water, but I actually really like the effect that that had, and because it just looks like more greenery. But see how that nicely filled that? So kind of added a little bit of depth and almost detail in there, and it was effortless. My gosh, I love that, and I'm tempted to say, other than the shadow under the pot, I kind of feel done with that. So I think I will do a shadow, and I think I'd like this to be maybe kind of on the ground or something. So maybe burnt sienna. I don't know. I'm tempted to do dark brown. You know what? Let's do that. And let's do this. Let's see. Just gonna go beside here. Me and these droplets today. Oh, okay. All right, took some dark brown on my brush. I love how it just kind of exploded over here. It really started just bleeding so great. I'm going to rinse that. And I am just trying to be kind of careful. Oh, but I really love that effect there. And I want this all the way up to the pot. So there we go. Can add a little bit more in if you want and just let it dance in that water and see what it wants to do. I'm going to give this just a tiny bit of blending there. And then I'm kind of at a loss as to, you know, how to have this not floating, but maybe let's use a little Payne's gray. So maybe it's on a deck or something. Tiny bit of that. I like to do these in a series of strokes because I feel like it's a little more forgiving if my line is not completely straight. And you'll notice, as I often do, I don't have my work completely centered in my paper, and you know, for me that's really okay. If that bothers you, if you end up with something like that and it bothers you at all, just cut your paper. And if it's something you end up wanting framed, you can have that matted. You know, there are lots of ways to fix that. So certainly don't let it take your joy over a great painting. But there you go. I'm so glad that you joined me today. I hope that you had a lovely time painting this, as lovely as I had painting it, and I hope that you will let me know whether you enjoyed it, and certainly feel free to DM me on Instagram, petite_mesquite_studio, with what you've created, or leave a comment here and tell me what you've done. I'd love to hear about it, and as always, happy painting.